Every empire hides a shadow ruler. Team Alcaraz just got exposed. The whispers point straight at Nadal. Fans claim he finally reveals everything. They talk about what the mother supposedly said during a moment in private. Words that allegedly proved the unthinkable. She knew. The father, insiders whisper, was going too far. Massive claim. The verified truth underneath is even darker. Start with April 2026. Ferrero still can't let go? He admitted he couldn't refuse if Carlos ever called him back. Haunting words from a man who never wanted out. He got pushed. The paper trail shows how. His renewal offer sat delayed for 2 weeks. Then came a brutal 48-hour deadline with zero room to negotiate. Sources close to Ferrero confirmed every detail, and one sentence changed everything. It came from the coach who raised little Carlitos before the fame. He says the father is the one really in charge and Carlitos has nothing to do with it. That quote is chilling. Meanwhile, Nadal's own junior tour quietly hosted this family's youngest prodigy. The parents skipped Turin for it. Coincidences keep stacking up. Subscribe now because fans who question everything belong here. Here's where the whole fairy tale falls apart. The date that matters is December 17, 2025. On that Wednesday, Carlos Alcaraz posted a message on social media that nobody in professional tennis saw coming. He announced the end of his partnership with Juan Carlos Ferrero, the man who had guided him since he arrived at the J.C. Ferrero Equilite Academy, as a 15-year-old with big ears and bigger dreams. The wording of the farewell was beautiful. Carlos thanked his coach for turning childhood dreams into realities, and he described an incredible journey shared on and off the court since he was barely a kid. Fans read it twice, then they read it a third time because something felt off. Great partnerships in tennis do not usually end 4 weeks before a Grand Slam. They especially do not end when the player just finished a season with 2 major titles and the world #1 ranking locked up. The timing screamed that something had ruptured behind closed doors, and the sports rumor machine started spinning before the ink on that Instagram post had dried. Ferrero's response confirmed every suspicion. While Alcaraz spoke of gratitude and mutual decisions, the 2003 Roland Garros champion offered a very different account of the ending. He stated plainly that he would have liked to continue. He said he had put his soul into the project. Read those words again and let them sink in, because a coach who agrees with a mutual separation does not talk like a man who was shown the door. 2 versions of the same event now existed in public, and only one of them could be true. Spanish tennis journalism went digging, and what surfaced painted an uncomfortable picture of how the most successful coaching partnership of the new generation actually died. According to reporting from the tennis outlet Clay, Ferrero finished the 2025 season expecting a routine contract renewal. The proposal from Alcaraz's camp took 2 weeks to arrive. When it finally landed, Ferrero was given roughly 2 days to read the terms and sign. A source close to the former world #1 told the publication that Juan Carlos refused to accept the offer, and the other side showed no willingness to change a single condition. Take it or leave it, he left it. Details of that offer leaked into fan spaces and ignited a firestorm. Reports circulated that Ferrero had been presented with a significant pay cut alongside the ultimatum, and supporters who had watched him pour 7 years into building a champion reacted with disgust. One viral fan comment accused the Alcaraz camp of being unbelievably money-hungry, and that sentiment spread across forums and comment sections within hours. Think about what was being alleged here. The winningest young player in tennis, a man earning tens of millions annually in prize money and endorsements, allegedly squeezed his most important professional relationship over contract terms. Whether the pay cut reports captured the full truth or only part of it, the pattern of the negotiation itself was never denied by anyone involved. A delayed offer, a compressed deadline, and zero flexibility do not describe a partnership ending naturally. They describe a decision that had already been made, with paperwork designed to make the exit look like the coach's choice. So the question every fan asked next was the right one. Who actually made that decision? Because the answer, according to a man who knows this family better than almost anyone alive, was not Carlos Alcaraz. His name is Carlos Santos, and he coached little Carlitos before the world knew the kid existed. Santos worked with Alcaraz during his childhood years in Murcia, shaping the raw material long before Ferrero ever entered the picture. He also lived through his own version of this exact story, because he too was eventually moved aside as the project around the young prodigy grew bigger and more professional. When news of the Ferrero split broke, Eurosport in Spain asked Santos whether the divorce came down to problems on the court. His answer detonated quietly and has been echoing ever since. He dismissed the tennis explanation completely. The issue, he explained, was financial, combined with a failure to agree on how much time Ferrero would spend with Carlitos at tournaments and on the road. Then the interviewer asked him to compare the situation to his own departure years earlier, and Santos admitted the parallel had not occurred to him until his wife pointed it out. What he said next is the single most important verified quote in this entire saga. In the end, Carlos's father is the one who is really in charge. Carlitos has nothing to do with it. Carlitos would have continued for as long as Juan Carlos wanted. Sit with that statement for a moment. A coach who spent years inside this family's inner circle, speaking on the record to a major European broadcaster, declared that the world number one does not control his own team. The father decides, the son complies. Santos even softened the blow with affection, adding that Carlitos loves Juan Carlos very much and will always cherish his memory, which somehow made the revelation more damning rather than less. He was not attacking the player. He was describing a power structure, one he had personally experienced from the losing side. His wife recognized the pattern before he did, which tells you the pattern was visible to anyone paying attention over the years. Two coaches separated by nearly a decade, removed under circumstances the player himself reportedly never wanted. That is no longer a coincidence. That is a system, and the man at the top of it has spent 2 decades constructing everything his son now stands on. Carlos Alcaraz Gonzalez deserves to be understood properly, because the caricature and the reality both matter here. He was a genuinely good tennis player in his own right, a former national-level competitor in Spain whose professional dreams never materialized the way his talent suggested they might. Instead of walking away from the sport, he built his life inside it, becoming the tennis director at the Real Sociedad Club de Campo in El Palmar, the working-class village outside Murcia where the family still lives. He put a racket in his second son's hands almost as soon as the boy could grip one. Carlitos was on court with his father from the age of 4, and the early coaching came directly from dad. Kiko Navarro, one of the first outside coaches to see the boy play, recalled that the father approached him personally and asked him to watch his son. Navarro described a kid of 4 or 5 years old who was already spectacular. The talent identification, the first training structure, the decision about which coaches entered the circle, all of it flowed through one man from the very beginning. When IMG agent Alfred Molina spotted 11-year-old Carlitos on the Nike Junior Tour and wanted to sign him, the negotiation went through the parents and took 8 full months to close. Nothing about this family's rise happened casually. Every gate had a gatekeeper. Here is where the story gets genuinely strange though, because the father's public image points in the opposite direction entirely. Carlos has spoken about his dad in interviews with real warmth, and one quote in particular has defined the public perception for years. His father, he explained, never wanted to mix the roles of parent and tennis coach. He always insisted on keeping those two things separate, and Carlos credits that boundary with helping him enormously. Media coverage ran with that framing. The hands-off tennis dad became part of the Alcaraz legend, a refreshing contrast to the overbearing sports fathers who have wrecked so many young careers across tennis history. Now hold that image next to the Santos quote and feel the friction between them. A father who supposedly stays out of the tennis decisions, described by a former insider as the one who is really in charge of every decision that matters. Both things could technically coexist, since staying off the practice court is not the same as staying out of the boardroom. Yet the distance between the myth and the testimony is exactly the space where this scandal lives. And it is the space that viral headline about the mother exploded into. Let's deal with that headline directly, because you clicked on it and you deserve a straight answer about what stands behind it. The claim spreading across tennis feeds asserts that Rafael Nadal revealed private comments from Virginia Garcia Escandon, words proving she knew her husband was going too far. We chase this claim through every published interview Nadal has given, every Spanish-language report on the Alcaraz family, and every credible tennis outlet on both sides of the Atlantic. No such statement from Nadal exists anywhere on the record. No verified quote from Virginia about her husband's role in the Ferrero decision has ever been published. What you are seeing is a rumor that grew in the vacuum this family deliberately created, and understanding why it grew tells you more about Team Alcaraz than the rumor itself ever could. Virginia is the most private figure in the entire operation. She worked as a shop assistant at IKEA while her husband ran the tennis club, and she has given essentially nothing to the press throughout her son's explosive rise. Her silence is total. Into total silence, people pour their theories. The few glimpses the public has ever received of Virginia reveal a woman her son adores beyond measure. The most famous moment came at Wimbledon in 2023, when Carlos won his semifinal on a day that happened to be Mother's Day in Spain. He walked to the courtside camera and wrote 3 words on the lens. "Pour ti, mama." For you, mom. In his on-court interview afterward, he explained that he had been unable to buy her a gift, so he hoped she enjoyed the words instead, and he promised her a really big hug. He described her as the constant support waiting at home, the emotional anchor of everything. This is the woman the viral headline claims spoke out against her husband in private. Could tensions exist inside that marriage over the direction of their son's career? Nobody outside the family walls can say. What can be said with certainty is that the only insider who has actually broken ranks and described the family's power dynamics on the record is Santos, and his finger pointed at the father's authority, not at any disagreement from the mother. The rumor essentially took the verified Santos revelation, dressed it in Nadal's credibility, and put words in Virginia's mouth to make it sting harder. The underlying accusations survived the costume change. The sources did not. Nadal's real connection to this family is worth exploring because it exists and it runs deeper than casual fans realize, which is precisely why his name gets borrowed for headlines like this one. Rafa has been the North Star of Carlos's entire life. The kid from El Palmar grew up worshipping the man from Manacor, studied his fighting spirit, and openly credits Nadal's refusal to surrender on any single point as the trait he tried hardest to absorb into his own game. The relationship extends beyond admiration into infrastructure. Nadal founded a junior circuit in 2014, the Rafa Nadal Tour, and it has functioned as a proving ground for the Alcaraz family across 2 generations of sons. Carlos himself won the under-12 division of the Tour's Masters back in 2015, then captured the under-14 title the following year. Almost a decade later, his youngest brother Jaime is walking the identical path. Jaime won a Rafa Nadal Tour under-12 event in Madrid in 2023, and by November 2025 he had battled his way to the final of the under-14 Masters in Mallorca, eventually falling to fellow prodigy José Luis Vega. The Alcaraz parents were there in Mallorca watching him. Remember that detail because of where they were not. Their absence was in Turin. While Jaime contested his final on Nadal's circuit, Carlos was competing at the ATP Finals, the crown jewel of the regular season, capping a year that included 2 Grand Slam titles. His mother and father skipped it entirely to sit courtside for the 14-year-old instead. On one level, the choice is touching: a family, refusing to let its youngest feel less important than its most famous. On another level, it fits the pattern Santos described with unsettling precision. The parents' attention follows the development project. Jaime is the next build, the next talent moving through the same pipeline, the same junior circuit, even the same tournaments his brother once won at the same ages. The machine that produced one world number 1 appears to be running a second time, managed by the same hands. Ferrero, meanwhile, watched all of this from the outside for the first time in 7 years, and when the Australian Open arrived in January, the whole world got to watch the experiment unfold. Could the empire actually function without the architect of its champion's game? Melbourne answered brutally. Alcaraz arrived at his first news conference of the season and performed diplomatic perfection. He described the Ferrero era as a chapter of life that had to end. He insisted the decision was closed mutually, claimed the two remained friends with a good relationship, and expressed deep gratitude for 7 years of learning. even acknowledging that he is probably the player he is today thanks to Juan Carlos. Pressed for actual details about why the partnership collapsed, he refused to go anywhere near them. He pivoted instead to confidence in his current team, pointing out that Samuel Lopez had already worked alongside him for a full year, and that nothing about the daily routine had changed, with the same group around him minus one member. The deflection was smooth, and it was also revealing. A truly clean mutual breakup costs nothing to explain. The vagueness protected something, and journalists in the room noted openly that his cheerful account could not be reconciled with Ferrero's public heartbreak. Then the tennis started, and the tennis made every question temporarily irrelevant. What Alcaraz did in Melbourne belongs in the sport's permanent record. He tore through the draw and reached the final against Novak Djokovic, the 24-time major champion and the last member of the old guard still standing. Djokovic took the first set 6-2 and briefly made the coaching change look like the disaster skeptics predicted. Alcaraz responded by dismantling him across the next three sets, closing out the match 2-6, 6-2, 6-3, 7-5 to capture his first Australian Open title and his seventh Grand Slam overall. The victory completed the career Grand Slam, and at 22 years old, he became the youngest man in the Open era ever to conquer all four majors. The record he broke belonged to Rafael Nadal. Boris Becker declared publicly that the 14 days since the season began had proven Team Alcaraz made the right decision in parting with Ferrero. Tim Henman called the achievement absolutely phenomenal, given how long the greats of the game needed to accomplish the same feat. The trophy vindicated everything, at least on the surface, and vindication is the most effective silencer in professional sport. Winners do not get interrogated, their choices get retroactively blessed. Spare a thought for the man watching from Spain. Ferrero admitted during the tournament that the experience was genuinely painful, telling the outlet 10 Golf that it was not easy to feel what he was feeling, even as he expressed happiness at how well Carlos was playing through the rounds. His next move stunned everyone all over again. In the middle of the Australian Open, Ferrero announced on Instagram a new professional collaboration for 2026, and the client was not a tennis player at all. He signed on to work with Angel Ayora, a professional golfer, a Roland Garros champion and the coach behind 7 years of the sport's brightest project, walked away from tennis entirely rather than take another job inside it. That decision speaks volumes about the depth of the wound. By April, his tone had softened into something almost tragic. He confirmed that coaching offers from tennis had arrived and that he refused to rule out a return during the year, though he had not yet felt the pull that would make him take the reins of a new project with real excitement. Then he added the sentence that broke fans' hearts. If Carlos ever asked him to return, he could not say no. The door on his side remains wide open. The door on the other side is controlled by someone else. And by now, you know exactly who Santos says holds that handle. Pull every verified thread together and the picture sharpens into something the fairy tale coverage never showed you. A father who built the foundation, controlled the gates, and according to the childhood coach who lived inside the system, still makes every call that matters while his son stays out of it. A legendary coach removed through a negotiation designed to fail, despite the player reportedly wanting him to stay forever. A previous coach who suffered the identical fate a decade earlier and finally said so out loud. A mother whose total silence became the canvas for the internet's darkest theories. A viral headline that borrowed Nadal's name to give those theories a face, attributing a private confession to a woman who has never spoken and a revelation to a legend who never made one. Strip away the fabricated messenger, and the accusation underneath still stands on documented ground. Somebody in that family holds power that the smiling press conferences refuse to acknowledge, and the only insider brave enough to name him did it on the record. She knew, the headline claims. The honest version is harsher. Everyone inside that circle knows, and the winning keeps them all quiet. That silence is exactly why channels like this one exist, and it is why you being here matters. The polished version of this story ends with a trophy in Melbourne and a hug at the net. The real version has a discarded mentor coaching golf, a childhood coach finally telling the truth, and a family empire whose next prodigy is already climbing the same ladder. We will be watching every step of it, From Jaime's junior results to Ferrero's next move to the moment anyone inside Team Alcaraz breaks their silence. And the second something cracks, you will hear it here first. So if you made it this far, you are precisely the kind of tennis fan we make these videos for. Hit that subscribe button right now, ring the notification bell so the next investigation lands directly in your feed, and drop your verdict in the comments below. Was the father protecting his son's future or controlling it? Smash the like button if this story changed how you see Team Alcaraz, share it with the tennis fan in your life who still believes the fairy tale, and we will see you in the next one.